Few words on comparison operators one more time. We did take a look at these operators in earlier lessons, but just quickly, the not equal to, or the equal to rather, as a first operator is your double equal signs, right? Not equal to is exclamation mark, equal sign. Then we have our less than, greater than, less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to. So these operators are helpful because when you're writing your code, you would use most of the times, quite frequently, these operators. Okay, finally, let's get to our program. Let's see if we can create a simple program in Python so that you take a look at, and I'll demonstrate what Python can do. First, let me go ahead and open up our Python idle here. So by clicking on File, New File, brings up the window. Let me minimize this so we can actually see. Okay, so let's begin by writing a simple program, and we'll try to use some of the concepts that we've talked about earlier and in previous lessons as well. So in this program, I'm going to use a simple logic. First, I'm going to ask the person's name, the person's age, and ask a couple other questions such as what's the temperature outside and whether they would like to go work out or not. And I'm also going to use some condition or loop as well. For instance, it would be something like if the temperature is greater than 70 degrees outside, then you ought to wear certain types of clothes, and so forth. So you get the logic, right? So it's a simple program that is going to be made in Python. So first, a good convention is always use the number sign, which is your comment code here. And I'm going to say enter your name and add a few spaces. Then I'm going to use an assignment statement using a variable called name and then my input function. Notice every time you use a function, Python color codes it, right? Whether it's the print function or the input function. And then I'm going to say use a string called what is your name, and add a few spaces and a question mark, of course, just so that when it prints in the idle, it allows for a space. Otherwise, it would not, and you would have to use or enter a name without a space in between. Okay. So once I've created the input function, so the first line of code is going to ask the name of the person, and then the person is going to enter the name, and then I'm going to tell Python to print hello, and then of course concatenate or add the name variable here. And then I can always use something like concatenate more, and maybe an exclamation mark, and close my parentheses. Okay. So here's the enter your name. Next comment, enter your age. Same thing, I'm going to repeat the first function here called the input function. So this will be age at this point. Age equals input, and use a string what is your age. Okay, so just repeated the first function that we used earlier as name. So age is the same one, so I'm going to tell Python to print once the person enters the name. Python is going to say that's great, and then of course I'm going to use the variable called name, concatenate one more time, and use my exclamation mark as well. Okay, great. Next comment, next logical step would be to ask for temperature outside. And here I'm going to use the same thing. Temperature equals. Now in this instance, the temperature can be 71 degrees, 72 degrees, 68 degrees, or it could be 68.2 or in decimals, right? So the temperature is not an integer, it could be a floating number, right? So recall the data types in Python. So it could be float. So we cannot really use the integer value. What if the person enters 72.1 degrees, where he looks at the temperature and the temperature scale shows that it's 71.2 degrees. But if you do not specify or tell Python to get the input of a float number, of course, it will not work. So we need to make sure that we add the data type called float. So it's temperature equals, I'm going to use float. And then I'm going to use my input function, right? So it'll be float input, and then parentheses one more time, and use my quotations. What is the temperature outside? And of course, I can always use the name as well. Or I don't have to. It just depends on your own logic, right? And the exclamation mark, and close the parentheses. And recall, since we began with 2 parentheses, I'm going to use 2 parentheses to end this, right? So one for the input, and the other one is for the string as well. So go to my next line. Let me, in fact, make it a little larger so you can see. Okay. So here's the temperature equals float input. What is the temperature outside? And of course, it's going to add or concatenate the name and plus our exclamation mark, not the 1. Okay. So so far, it's going to prompt again for an input or ask the user a question, right? Like, what is the temperature outside? And then I'm going to add a condition to it, right? So I'm going to say if temperature is greater than, right? This is the greater than sign, the operators, remember, is greater than 70, then print. And notice as soon as I hit enter, recall we talked about using a semicolon, right? So you enter a semicolon, that means indent. So Python is going to indent the print here. So I'm going to say print. So if the temperature is greater than 70 degrees, then wear shorts. Okay. And then also I'm going to say a couple of other things like print, enjoy your day. And I'm going to concatenate one more time with the name. Okay, so just a simple print function. So if the temperature, first it's going to ask what is the temperature outside. If the temperature is greater than 70, then the output is going to be wear shorts and enjoy your day, and then display the name. Of course, if I'm using if, what if the temperature is not 70 degrees outside or greater than 70 degrees outside? Then what should be done, right? So we need to also specify that. So I'm going to say else, and of course indent again, simply print, and I'm going to say wear long pants, and use the name again. And notice I'm being consistent with my coding here, right? So I'm making sure that the output is consistent at all input. So here's my exclamation mark, and I'm going to do another print here, and I'm going to say wear long pants and get some exercise, or get some good workout, or get some exercise. Fair enough. Okay, get some exercise outside. Okay, great. So what are we doing here? We're entering a name, asking for a name, asking for the age, and then simply using a logic by first specifying a float number as temperature, and then if the temperature is greater than 70, wear shorts, enjoy your day. Otherwise, else, wear long pants and get some exercise outside. Okay. So once your code is complete, let's do a save, and I'm going to call it temperature. Click save, and let's run the module and see what happens. So first, click on run module, and the very first thing that Python asks is, what is your name? So I'm going to say it's John. It says, hello John, what is your age? I'm going to say 22, of course not my real age. That's great, John. What is the temperature outside, John? So I'm going to say it's 78.6 degrees. Wear shorts. Enjoy your day, John. And the program ends. Okay. So notice here the last part that is printed is get some exercise outside only if the temperature is less than 70. Otherwise, I'm going to get this message. Enjoy your day, John, right? Let's try again. Let's run the program again, and this time the temperature is going to be less than 70, right? So in my first example, I showed temperature as being greater than 70 degrees. Next time, if the program runs again, let's use a value that is less than 70 and see what happens. So let's go run module again. And what is your name? I'm going to say John one more time. Hello John, what is your age? It's 22, that's great. What's the temperature outside? So I'm going to say it's 68 degrees. And automatically I get the message saying, wear long pants, John, get some exercise outside, right? So this way you can create your own program by following a simple logic and of course using comments within each code block. So in this lesson, we created our first Python program with a simple logic. And of course, it's always a good idea to create a flowchart of your program first before you actually write the program. Now, of course, you can always go back to this code and add more to the code as well. For instance, if you need to add another print function here under name, so it will first ask you what is your name, and then it's going to say hello John, and then I'm going to say hope all is well. Of course, I need to use my string here. Okay, and then of course if I run this again, click on the run module option, of course it's going to save first. And it asks, what is your name? We'll say it's John. And notice it says, hello John, hope all is well. What is your age, right? And then it goes to the next line, age, and it's going to prompt you for the age, and then the temperature block is going to run again. So this way you'll have to revisit your code and make changes to it because the requirements may change. And that's why it's helpful to use blocks and use spaces in between your code blocks, use comment code, and of course the color coding helps in Python, and you can start building your code as you move along from one program to the other. So practice creating a simple program, follow simple logic, and let's move to our next lesson.